And now on the line is Marcella Stakem, our Research and Policy Officer with the Society of St. Vincent de Paul. Marcella, welcome to the programme.
Thank you very much.
Marcella, I've done a few interviews with some of your colleagues on Near FM over the years, and the last interview I did with you was with Caroline Fahy about what you were calling for in the 2019 local and European elections. Since my last interview with Caroline, we had a general election in Ireland last year, and also, of course, since early last year, we have had the COVID pandemic. Could you tell me bluntly, Marcella, how much of an impact has COVID had on your organisation and the people that you help?
Yeah, so what we have seen during 2020 and again this year is that the pandemic has heightened and exposed long-term issues for people that were living on low incomes and financial insecurity. So this year we are expecting approximately 200 calls from people needing help by the end of this year. And we have been in existence for 177 years in Ireland, and we are anticipating that this Christmas will be the busiest for our members. We published research earlier this year that showed how the pandemic is disproportionately impacting low-income groups. So, for example, it showed that almost 1 in 10 renters are behind on their rent, and a quarter are behind on their bills, and 1 in 4 were reported to be cutting back on food and utilities. And for us, that's really important findings because it highlights for us an alternative narrative that's been portrayed that says that people have actually been able to save during the pandemic. And that is not the reality for a significant proportion of Irish society. It shows instead that many are facing a multitude of financial pressures due to the pandemic, including loss of income, unemployment, and increased household expenditure on food and utilities. And unfortunately, and I suppose not surprisingly, it also found that those that were experiencing and are experiencing the most adverse financial consequences from the pandemic were vulnerable to poverty prior to the pandemic, including low-income families with children, people with disabilities, renters and lone parents. So I suppose for us, though that research has really exposed and heightened our understanding of the severe struggles that people are facing right now.
Okay, we'll come back in a few minutes to talk about what the government and our listeners on Near FM as well can do to help. I hear a lot on social media, on Twitter. I don't know if it's to the same extent in Ireland, but in the US, I believe that there's a huge problem over there with people taking out money on credit cards, and they also have connected to that, which I know is an issue. I don't know how big of an issue, but you have money lenders as well, which can be very dangerous. Could you tell me, are the problems with this with credit cards and money lenders in Ireland, is it as bad as the US, do you know?
It possibly isn't as bad, but we do see definitely issues there around people, getting into difficulty with money lenders, and it's really it stems back from people being on very low incomes and not being able to afford the basics. So we would often meet with families who say they have got into debt, and they have, as a result, they have gone to a financial or gone to a money lender to help them. But as a result, they have got further into debt. And so that is very worrying because, at the moment, there is very little financial controls around people, accessing money lenders. And we would have advocated and continue to advocate that, there would be more controls in place, and that if people are facing difficulties, that they would come to us or contact their local credit union, who can provide, assistance and loans at more affordable rates.
Okay, Marcella, I know that we had the budget announced by the government only in October, and Christmas Day 2021 is at the end of next week. Is there anything practical that the government can do in your view, Marcella, at the moment and in upcoming weeks and months, to bearing in mind about the budget, to help make it easier for people who are struggling at the moment?
Yeah, so what we say, at every budget time and at all budgets, is that budgets really are about choices. And we always want to see, and we always advocate that the choices made in budgets needs to protect the most vulnerable and those affected by poverty and low incomes. And we did welcome the necessary welfare increases that were announced in the last budget, but we do feel that they will be insufficient to keep people afloat in a sea of rising living costs. And as a result, life will be even harder for those struggling on a low income. And we had hoped with government promises to build back better post-COVID-19 that Budget 22 would have been the start of that transformative change needed to tackle long-standing issues like poverty and homelessness and education and disadvantage. And we would advocate that every budget and every policy decision made by our government has the opportunity to redesign how our economy meets people's needs. So that can be done by addressing poverty and inequality through adequate social welfare rates, providing opportunities for decent and sustainable work, and investing adequately in quality services such as public services such as housing and childcare and education and transport. And for us, we see that those actions would put us on a path to delivering an Ireland where the quality of life is improved for all and where the experiences of poverty is the exception rather than the reality it is right now for hundreds of thousands of people.
You mentioned the cost of living there. Inflation is a huge issue, and according to reports I'm reading on social media and Twitter about it, it's going to get worse in the new year. Like, what do you say to that?
Yeah, we are seeing that ourselves in our calls. We are getting, a lot of calls in the last number of months from people that are getting increases or receiving increases on their rent from their private landlords, increases in their utility bills, increases in food and utilities, as I said. So that is worrying. So we really need to see those issues being addressed by our government, in a variety of ways, because they are at the core of why so many people are struggling right now and who are living on low incomes.
Okay, Marcella, this time of the year, Christmas is a very special time of the year, and it's awful to think that there are a lot of people who are struggling in Ireland and around the world at the moment. To come towards the end of our interview, can you tell our listeners on Near FM if there's anything they can do, not just at the moment at Christmas time, but leading us into the new year? Is there anything they can do to support you with your work and on social justice in general?
Yeah, so I suppose it is always useful for the general public to know why we work for social justice and why it continues to form part of our core mission statement in SVP. Like, for example, right now there are approximately 630,000 people living below the poverty line. There are approximately 21,000 people living in hidden homelessness. So that means they are doubling up or oftentimes tripling up with friends and family because they simply have nowhere else to go. And there are over 8,000 people living in emergency accommodation, and over 2,000 of those are actually children. So the homeless crisis is, I suppose, the most severe form of poverty we are seeing. And we have many other social justice issues around people that are experiencing educational disadvantage and energy poverty. So I think it's really, really important that people are aware that these issues exist and continue to exist, unfortunately, in our society. I suppose the second issue is if people can donate to the society, we are forever grateful because, our members work really hard to provide the assistance that's needed, but they can only do that if they can get the help from the general public. But I have to say that our members say every year that right throughout the year that the general public are really good in supporting the work of the society because they know how valuable it is for people that are experiencing poverty and marginalisation and are affected by a whole range of those social justice or social injustices right now.
And just to finish up, like, you depend a lot on donations from the public and your charity shops, I believe, as well. Like, you have space for volunteers every year, do you?
Yes, we do. We're always looking for volunteers, and particularly this year, we're looking for volunteers more than ever because, you know, a lot of our volunteers have been affected by various issues that have arisen during COVID-19, and we need as many volunteers as possible to carry out the work, the increased work that you know continues because of COVID-19, but also because of the issues that existed before COVID-19 still exist. So we're always looking for more volunteers. No, I think that's it. Thank you very much for having me on today, and we look forward to speaking with you again in the new year.